It started with a committee. I mean, there was a committee of people out here. It was 5 men originally, and then they added some other folks in by the time I got here in '96. But they just felt there was a need for another parish out here because of the growth of the area. They did some surveys to find out if there was interest, and went to the diocese and made a presentation. You know, in the meantime, a priest from the diocese had been calling me a couple times about coming out here, and I always had some reason, you know, why I didn't think it was a good time to come, and he didn't call back right away, so I would just, you know, keep doing what I was doing over at the University of Dallas. But then in the spring of 1996, you know, I realized it was time to come and make the change, and so the parish started with a Mass on June 15th, 1996 in Dowell Middle School. That was our very first Mass. And then we started meeting in Slaughter Elementary School at the end of July 1996, and had regular Masses from that point on. We started raising money right away. In the fall of 1996, we had a little campaign just called First Step. And it was just organized, and we had red and green envelopes around Christmas time, and people could make an extra donation to, I mean, the first step was really to get land. Part of the committee had also, you know, scouted out 10 or 12 different pieces of land. And so we looked at some of those, and, you know, we tried to just raise money to secure a spot. And then we went from, in the meantime, we met in several different public schools. We met in Slaughter and Berks on the east side, and then back to Slaughter, and then to Caldwell, and then we spent a little bit of time in Fabian. And during that time, we were also getting together the committees, the building committee, the finance committee. We developed some trusts as a way of securing the funds, and then began to, you know, hired an architect in 1998 and began to develop the plans. First, we did a master plan for the whole site, and then we designed this building. And I think the groundbreaking for that was in December of 1999. We planted a tree out here in November of 1997. That was our very first action out here. We had a tree planting ceremony, a red oak, and the tree is still out on the front side of the building on the northeast corner. So we need to put a plaque there someday so people remember it's our original tree. Yeah. You know, I think the excitement was even before that, because a lot of the people who came forward to work on it, you know, were people who were willing to pitch in and make things happen, who realized there wasn't already a community there to make things happen, that if things were going to happen, they would have to do it. And so they would pitch in and set up for Mass every week, and set up for religious education classes, and they would set up socials and, you know, form committees. And so there was already a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. You know, it also kind of wears on you after 4 or 5 years of setting up temporary spaces every year. So, I mean, it was really a landmark event in June of 2001 when we were able to move in this place. I remember there were 2 different reactions to the place. People, you know, that had been on that journey and had helped, you know, construct and support the building were so excited. We had our own place finally where we could meet, and this was really our parish home. And a lot of newcomers would come and think, this is just a plain box. I mean, what kind of church is this? But you know, over the years we furnished it and, you know, put a little bit of stained glass in, and, you know, we had we tried to make it feel like a church, even though it was meant to be a temporary church. It has been. I mean, one story I've told people over and over again until they're tired of it is the story of the man planting mangoes. You know, you probably know the story. There's a man planting mangoes on a hot day. He's actually just pushing little sticks into the ground along a road, and a younger man asks him what he's doing, and he says, I'm planting mangoes. And the younger man says, well, that's dumb. He said, you'll never live long enough to eat any mangoes off these trees. And he says, it occurred to me the other day that all my life I've enjoyed eating mangoes off of trees that other people have planted, and this is my way of saying thank you. You know, and so I would just talk a lot about how the places and the churches and the schools that we came from, somebody else had built those, and we just came and enjoyed them and used them without giving much thought to it, and we really had the opportunity to lay the foundation for this new community, you know, and to leave a legacy for people who came after us. So I think, and I mean, just for me personally, that was exciting, you know, to be able to really be in on the ground floor of something and determine how it looks and how it's shaped, not just the buildings, but also the community. I mean, one story I was thinking about was, there was a family that moved out here, Jeff and Mary Beth Gramlich, and had 3 kids, and they were going to St. Mark's, and they were talking about moving in closer to St. Mark's so that it would be easier to get to school. And the youngest, John, said, well, no, I've got to be there. I've got to set up the chairs. I've got to help set up the chairs. So there was a sense of ownership. I think doing things like the clusters in religious education, having the opportunity to do that, to try to present a new model for faith formation, especially in an area where there aren't very many outside supports for faith formation. There aren't schools and priests and sisters and some of the things that people traditionally relied on for faith formation, and it gave the opportunities for families to do that and to have that as a shared experience also. Also, we live in a place where people are not around family. It provided, in some ways, in some instances, extended family for people. Something that's really helped us in the last couple years has been doing Christ Renews His Parish. It's given so many people an opportunity to come to a renewed experience of faith, of Christ's love for them, and the gifts that come to us through reconciliation, through the sacraments, and also that we really have an obligation and an opportunity and gifts to share with other people, and that that our faith in Christ is something which is living and active and really life-giving, and not just something that we think about in our heads or we do at church on Sunday but not the rest of the week. I think that's had a profound effect on the parish over the last 4 years or so. I think having the opportunity from the beginning to have an RCIA. From the very first year we had 9 people who were preparing for baptism and reception to the church, that there's always been that new life coming into the parish through people coming into the church, but also through so many new people coming and joining the church, just moving into the area. The other story I haven't told as much, but I think about a lot is it was a school teacher who taught 3rd grade, and every year the kids would give him gifts at Christmas. And after a while, he could recognize what they were by the shape of the box, and he got a lot of handkerchiefs. So he'd take them home, and he wouldn't even open them up. He would just put them in his closet, and then once in a while, when he would need a handkerchief, he'd unwrap it and start to use it. And one year, he opened up one several months after Christmas, and inside there was a beautiful antique gold watch that had belonged to the grandfather of one of his students, and she had given that to him as a gift. And he just said, I had this beautiful antique gold watch with me the whole time, and I didn't know it. And I think about that as, we have these wonderful gifts that God gives us, the gift of the Spirit and confirmation, the Eucharist, and sometimes we just kind of put them on a shelf because they're familiar and we don't really pay much attention to them. And once in a while to unwrap them and to really understand the precious gift that faith is, and to be willing to share that with other people more. I think that's another story I think about a lot. Well, the 2 things that we were focused on this last year, and that I hope will continue on, the one is, and really are already processes that are underway substantially. One is I thought, well, we need to build the church, the full final church building, the permanent sanctuary for the community. This really is not of adequate size. I think it's beautiful, but it's not of adequate size and permanency to serve the community for generations to come. And I still see that as the work of the founding generation now, that a generation is 25 years long. It isn't just 10 or 11 years, and we've accomplished great things in 11 and a half years, but it really still is in the middle of laying the foundation for the future. And I think it's our really work to build the church, and or the work of this community in the next several years. I also think we were working on the pastoral planning process to say we're also building the church as the body of Christ, as the people who will inhabit this, and giving careful attention to what the Lord calls us to do, who He calls us to be, how we use the gifts that He gives us, what kind of things we should focus on. The pastoral planning process that started last spring really came down to say, well, let's look again at our faith formation programs, youth ministry, hospitality, how we welcome not just newcomers but all comers. How do we communicate, and what's the best way to organize ourselves so that we can really accomplish what the Lord wants us to accomplish? And my hope is that those will go right on, and I'm confident Father Don will let those processes go on and put his own stamp on it. I was very happy when he was named to be pastor here. And then I think, I look forward to coming to the party, and celebrating the conclusion of not just the conclusion of the campaign, but also the groundbreaking for the church and the first Mass. An 11-and-a-half-year-old kid is a middle school kid, and we're kind of in middle school. We still have a long way to grow. Be bold and be generous. And God is never outdone in generosity.